Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Recorded this song with the band a few weeks ago. I engineered the project, mixed and mastered it, all with just what I could gather for tools and that I've been working with over the years. I know I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur using Cakewalk, but it's free. It seems fully functional. The product came out well. I am using a few purchase plugins and some free plugins as well. So we'll walk through what is here for tracks and what the project consisted of, and then we'll dive in and listen to some samples of some stuff that's in here. So we have 5 vocal tracks. Andrew laid his own harmonies over top of everything here, and you can see the extensive tracking that he did. That was recorded at home. He has a full rig there to do his vocal recording. We made a decision to do a driven vocal sound, which we'll get into in a moment. After that, we had guitar. The remaining of the tracks were all recorded. All the rhythm was recorded on one day, one afternoon, at the jam space that we were using at the time. So we have a straight up guitar track. We have a chorus track. There's a section where the guitar is really quiet. We'll get into that. Lead track, and then there's an end section with some gain added to the track, to the guitar to make it stand out a bit more. We DI'd the bass off of a bass amp, and I processed one additional track by duplicating his take and adding a bit of an effect to it to give it a bit of presence, and again, we'll get into that. We have an electric piano that Mr. John Morris played, and an organ that Mr. Morris played. And then we have a kick, a snare, tom 1, tom 2, overhead left and right. So we'll start with the drum sound. If you're not familiar with the song, there will be all the platforms have it for streaming. You can get it on Spotify and YouTube and anywhere you get music, you can get the song. So go check it out if you want to hear the final track. So here is just the drums soloed out, and then we'll walk through some of the settings that we have on those. So that was a sample of the drums. So now we can pull up and listen to just the kick. So you hear some heavy gating there, and that's to keep the bleed from getting through. So the first thing I do is have an EQ on it, and then there's the gate there. So we'll listen to it without the gate enabled. You hear a fair amount of stuff. And you're hearing the drum reverb now, as I don't have just the bus selected. So you can hear how well that cuts out a little of the excess. And once it's buried in the mix, you can't really hear that. Then we'll go to the snare. I'll jump ahead a little bit here so we don't have to wait as long. So that is your snare sample. It's pretty groovy. Here's tom 1 and tom 2. I'll see if I can find a section. Again, you're getting a fair amount of room noise. And then the overheads capture pretty much an essence of the overall feel of the kit. So we'll go back here a little bit. You'll notice those are pretty thin, but I was getting enough beef and low end off of the close mics that I just wanted to accentuate the overall tone. And these are mixed quite far down in the order of things. The toms are fairly quiet. Now, if we take that section and just listen to the drum bus soloed out. So you can hear that the overheads just needed to add a bit of crispness to the whole thing. All right, so that's kind of where the drums are sitting. There's a bit of verb on them. The buses basically feed into the master. So if you saw the I/O of these, you would see that the bus feeds to the master, and I can also do a send to different tracks. So I have a reverb track over here for the drums, and I'll just isolate that out so you can hear what the reverb sounds like without the drums. Now with the drums involved with the reverb. So that gives you a sense of how much verb is sitting there and how it adds into the mix. And you also have to take into account this is all running through the mastering plugins and stuff that are sitting on the bus after the fact. Okay, so next we'll move into the bass. Our bass tone, I'll pull this back over. Our bass is 2 tracks. So if I solo the first one, so that is a pretty present bass. It's quite noisy in a good way, so that it stands out against the guitars and the keys that are going on. And then basically all I did was duplicate the channel and add a guitar amp with a bit of drive on it. And when you hear this, it will sound ugly by itself, and it's turned way down in the mix. And what that does is allow the bass to have some presence in the mix that would otherwise get buried. So when you solo with the bass and so there you can hear how the two complement each other, and it gives you that nice crispy sound that will sit well. So now if we bring the drums into the mix with the bass, so that gives you a sense of where they sit together in the mix. So next we'll move on to some guitar stuff here. Let's go up and look at this guy. So the main guitar of the song. This is recorded, I do believe, a Strat style guitar into a Class A tube amp. Super funky, beautiful tones, beautiful tones. Then if we go look at what I'm running here, I'm running, again, just a bit of EQ to take off some low end, mostly for a high pass filter. I'm compressing a little bit twice. I'm using a CLA 76 plugin. It's an 1176 emulation that basically I'm not really processing on. I'm just using it as a flavor to add that flavor to it. It's not actually compressing a lot. I'm using a bus emulator or a channel emulator to emulate a Neve console so that you get a little bit of bite and character in it, because digital recording can be a little dry. And then there's an L3 Ultra Maximizer on here just to basically level off the playing where it is quite a funky guitar. You want to have it kind of comp down to the point where it's not going to jump out and scream at you a little bit, so that it can keep the peaks under control. So then we'll go to the chorus guitar is the next thing that we would have. So that is just complementing what this one's doing. So we'll give it context of those two guitars together. So there you get a sense of what's going on with those two. And then we have a quiet guitar in the bridge section of the song that is just beautiful sounding. This section of the song, the bridge, we put some thought into it, and there's some cool tricks going on that we'll get into here that do something really neat. Okay, so there's a spot in the song right here. I'll actually play from a little bit before. It's super quiet and dynamic, and it's just to build into a lead section. So if I play this section at full volume with all the instruments enabled, you're going to hear. So one of the cool things that Scott and John worked out was this quiet guitar actually has a looping delay, tape delay on it, It's a pedal that is used on the pedal board of the guitar, and he hits a harmonic and lets the pedal loop it, so you get this tone. So now if we go down to the organ and solo that out, at the same time that he hits that, the organ hits the same note, similar register, with a slightly different tonal feel to it. And as it plays through, that being an organ emulation, John has the ability to pull in the harmonic registers with the Hammond emulation, so that he's only started with one of the registers enabled and then gradually pulls them all in as it goes through. So I'll play that guitar and that organ together, and you can hear how they work off each other. And right there, you heard the organ take fully over as the guitar stops playing that note, as that is where the lead starts to really come in and be its thing. So maybe we should look at the lead next. I got to say, this is one of my favorite guitar leads I've heard Scott play. We did some volume correction on it to sort of sit in the flow of the music, but just as a tone in general, it sounds really, really good. I do believe he was using a fuzz, maybe an octafuzz. I'm not sure if it's an octafuzz or not, but it is definitely a fuzz pedal. And it's right on the edge of like failure, breakup kind of sound. So it sounds pretty neat. So we'll put that in context from that point forward so you can hear it with the rest of the band. It sounds pretty decent. So there, you get to hear the solo in context, and you can see how it just builds the energy, and the band builds behind that to create that pop, so that when it gets into the chorus, that we're at basically our highest level of energy in the song that you can get to. So the next thing to cover off is Mr. John Morris. So we'll go back and we'll check out some keys. Now, if you solo that out against the main guitar and the bass, the entire rhythm section is just awesome. So yeah, you can hear how everything plays into that same pocket together, and it's pretty slick. Very well done. A little variance there to add to it. Now, what we did is on the intro, we instead of doing a big long sorted intro, which is what we originally had written, we decided then just to do a bass slide with a keyboard or an organ slide. So if I bring those together, you'll hear that. So we take the organ out, you can hear the bass, which sounds pretty cool. And then the organ does a slide up to the key note that we wanted. And that just gives you a bit of a run-in to build the energy so that you know the song is starting, gives a little breath before the vocals actually kick in. And then all the choruses have the organ on it as well, I do believe. So the first chorus is quite short. It's actually a half chorus. If we get to the second one, I do believe there's added notes about halfway through. So yeah, that's how our organ sits out. Again, I'm running the just simple processes of EQ, compression, and some channel emulation to add a bit of grit to it. Just some harmonics to make it jump out. So that's the organ. We've got the drums, we've done the bass, we've done the guitar. So, oh yeah, maybe the end of the song has a guitar has a added end gain section I mentioned earlier, which is right there. We'll go to that. This is a pretty heavy sound considering the song, but it sounds really good. So this is the heavy gain guitar, I would call it, or end gain. It's using the same fuzz effect that the solo had, so when the solo ends, you don't feel like there's a drop in dynamic level. We added that guitar in to fill in that sonic area. And in context, it sounds like this. Okay, so now we probably have to dig into the thing that I know I'll probably get in trouble for showing, is the vocal takes. Even though I think they're great, I'm sure there'll be someone will be a little upset that I put this out. Sorry, Andrew. So what you'll see is that, again, we're running, there's a voice plugin here, voice centric, that just adds a bit of clarity to it. Yes, I'm using that as a safety net, although it doesn't need it. I can turn it off and on and no one can hear the difference. I've got it set so mildly that it's actually not grabbing notes. But it's just a safety net to make people feel better. FabFilter Pro Q3, we're using a de-esser, and we're adding that voice centric, which adds just a bit of compression and a little bit of clarity to the vocal. And then we're gritting it up with its NLS channel. Now you'll see that Andrew recorded super hot, and that was a tonal choice so that we would get that almost through a megaphone sound. It actually sounds pretty decent by itself.
Baby, well, don't you get me wrong. Even leeches have the use.
Now, if you go look over here, I have basically the vocals running through a bunch of stuff, another Q3 to balance them out a little more, that for a mild compression, the bus master, and we're using some imaging. The imaging in this song is really a secret to get things wider. The Ozone Imager, I can't suggest it enough to people if you're doing mixing. It's a super handy tool. Actually, I could probably, best example of it would be the organ. I'm really using it heavily on the organ. So if we take the organ track and solo this out, and I'll go to the end of the song. Sorry, I'll get back to the vocals in a second. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I really think this is an important thing to see. So what's going on is it's spiraling this into the array. So this left-right and sort of centery area. So if I disable that plugin, you're going to hear how so it sounds pretty center, and then when I do this, so it gives some real good width. As you've seen, I was toggling it on and off there to demonstrate how that works. So yeah, Andrew did his vocal 1-2. Basically, it's his main verse vocal, and then there's some added harmonies and spots. So we'll pull this one up here and show that harmony.
To the abuse.
Actually, here's a good spot to show off all the tracks.
This hole in my head. Yeah.
So unison vocals can really add a nice, I want to sing along with that feel. So we use that a lot in the song.
This hole in my head. Yeah.
And then a really nice harmony to top it off. And then there's a harmony track here.
This hole in my head. Yeah.
And then if we do this one here, this is another track of harmony.
This hole in my head. Yeah.
So you end up with this big, full-sounding vocal. There's only a couple times in the song that vocal 5 comes into play, and it's more or less to keep the choruses balanced off on their own. So we might as well go right to the end where the good stuff is. We'll go right here and show this off. This is a pretty good spot to see how much vocal goodness there is.
This hole in my head where the light comes in, I'd sooner be dead than to let you in again.
So yeah, you get the sense there that it's all about capturing that energy, that performance, and whatever else. So yeah, that's how we did that part of it. As far as anyone wondering about the mastering process, it really is tricky. I'm not the best at it by any means. Definitely not the best at it. There's so much to it. I'm just scratching the surface. Essentially, what I do is I go through and get the track sounding really good by itself. Then the step after that is to essentially, I do some minor corrective EQ at that point as I'm listening through. I do that to each bus as I mix it down. I'll corrective EQ, I'll compress a bit there. I add the Saphira stereo is basically a saturation plugin. It's not a lot. It's very subtle, but every step of it amplifies the next kind of thing. It's compounding. Ozone 9 Elements is their cheap or inexpensive mastering plugin suite. I'm using it just as an EQ stage and a stereo widening stage, again, because it has the imager built into it. IM Pusher is pretty much where all the pump of this song comes from. It's coming out of that plugin, and that plugin adds a lot of low end and a lot of gain and push and compression. And then I'm just maximizing it with a couple layers of mild maximizing limiting. And then here's the plugin that allows me to send the audio to the stream so that you can hear what I'm saying and what I'm playing back. So we'll take that chorus section and play that back in context so you get Andrew's vocals along with the mastering, and maybe I'll back a few of these off. So we'll start with nothing, and you can hear what the mix sounds like. This will sound dramatically different. So the NLS bus is basically just a console emulation. Again, everything's very subtle, so I'll step through these. So now we'll add the EQ in. I think it's a pretty mild EQ. I'm just taking a bit of treble off, I do believe. Almost imperceivable at this point. The Saphira, again, is just a bit of adds some dirt and grit to the mix. So as you can tell, it's, again, very subtle, very little there. We'll add the Ozone 9 in next. So as you can hear, as we're enabling the plugin and disabling, it's glitching a little bit, but you're hearing a little bit of a perceived volume increase from that one, as it has a maximizing volume thing on it, but I'm not using it very hard. We'll take a quick look. Yeah, I'm only grabbing down to minus 1.8 and clipping it to there, so it's only the loudest things that it's grabbing at this point. IM Pusher is running heavy. I'm going to guarantee this will be a lot louder. As you can tell, that one's doing a lot of work. It's adding so much stuff. There's what it looks like. It takes an input, adding a little bit of highs, changing the stereo image a bit. The magic button is one of my favorites. This whole section adds some cool stuff. The body, some lows, and then this is the compressor on the far side of it. You can see it just starting to clip here on the push. Then we add the L3 Ultra Maximizer pair. It is just literally like go down to 3 dB and clip it to 0. This will be considerably louder. So you can see the attenuation there is running, down 1 or 2 dB. So it's, again, just taking the top edges off to allow us to get the body of the music up further in volume. And then I added another layer. Here it is here. And again, I'm going down minus 2.3 and clipping it off at 0.3, minus 0.3, as that is a kind of a safety net just to make sure that we don't send an absolute 0 through. So you can see that's attenuating pretty hard, and now we're getting at the point where we have the volume that we're really, really looking for to be able to make it sound pro and fit in the mix with the majority of the music that's out there. So yeah, you get to see how that all plays out. What I will do is I'll go back to the lead. I'm going to show you some of these bus tricks that I'm using here. So I showed you the drums, how the drum verb goes through. We'll start on that lead in here. And I'll just show you what the lead effects are. So what I'm doing is basically taking the lead and sending it out to this guitar verb track. The guitar verb is right here, and I'm using basically a reverb, and I'm using the ozone imager. So the guitar verb you're going to hear sounds like this. So how's that singing in the bathroom kind of tone to it, which adds a closeness to it, but the imager allows it to get wide so that you hear it on the outer fringes of the mix. You've heard the drum verb. We'll do the piano verb next. I do believe I'm only sending piano, so we'll have to go back to the start of the song for that. So you can see how the piano by itself, where it's a DI'd signal off of an electric piano, is pretty dry. And we wanted to perceive that singing in the bathroom kind of sound again for all these instruments, or like you're playing in a small space with solid walls. So when we put that on, you'll hear the piano suddenly opens up and sounds like legit. And then we did the same thing, well, it's the same thing, completely different process for vocals. We're adding a lot of different stuff in here, reverb, delay, and the imager. So if I turn that on, again, it's mixed down quite low in the mix, but so again, it's almost like a bullhorn echo-y kind of sound to it. Again, going for that vintage sound. So we put the vocals with it. Then you can start to hear how it all merges together.
Well, don't you get me wrong. Even leeches have the use.
So that gives you the sense of that push that we're adding to it there. And the bass, again, we're just doing some minor processing. The bass is probably the least processed thing on this whole track. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of a walkthrough. I hope I'm not too boring for anyone that watches this. If you have any questions, hit me up. I hope it was educational. I hope or other people that really, really know something will watch this and shred me apart, I will hope that happens. I would love to learn. I'm always open to learning too. So if you've seen something that I did wrong or should do better, by all means, please let me know. Hopefully enjoy that, and please go check out the finished track out there on the internet. I dig it. Obviously, I dig it well enough to put the work into it, and I figured some people might enjoy to see this kind of thing. So, thanks, and maybe we'll do another one of these if enough people dig it. So have a good day.